feeling more pragmatic than traumatic lately. But baby, my demons survived that Reiki, and so will yours. Not a matter of when, it's a matter of why, and all the matters begin. So will you sink or fly, relive the nightmare again, or will you learn all the lessons so your story can end?
There was one before. Now there are many.
Wrongful convictions are the reality many men and women are facing here and abroad.
Yeah, today is National Wrongful Conviction Day, and one recently exonerated Michigan man and his attorney are raising awareness, explaining how these wrongful convictions are seriously impacting lives. It was a real challenge, so it's like I had to defend for myself every day. My faith was gone, like all hope was gone. For Michael Griffin, life after lockup has been tough. Wow, I was accused of murdering my daughter. 7 months old. 7 months old. Back in 2009, Griffin was 19 years old. He'd rushed his infant daughter, Nevaeh, to Flint's Hurley Medical Center after she'd fallen from a motorized swing. The baby was struggling to breathe due to brain injury. The next day, Griffin learned his little girl was gone. It happened so quick, like the moment she died, I got locked straight up for her. So I really didn't have no time to sit and grieve over. I got locked straight up. Griffin was a first-time father, convicted to a life sentence on murder charges for a crime he's always maintained he didn't commit. The guards already know why you in there. So they start saying stuff. There's the baby killer. There's the guy who killed his kid. So people reading off into that. The guards already know why you in there. So they start saying stuff. There's the baby killer. There's the guy who killed his kid. So people reading off into that. Back in May this year,
Is it real?
yes, right. Griffin was released from prison after the Michigan Innocence Project urged Southfield-based attorney Mike Morse to take a look at his case pro bono. How did it make you feel? You know, you're the first person to actually haven't nobody ask me how I feel since I'm there. Everybody's just happy I'm home, but having nobody sit down and ask me how I feel. And to answer your question, I'm still angry. Angry, Williams says, at the system. A flawed system, according to his attorney, where many wrongfully convicted men and women didn't get a fair shake.
There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people in prison right now serving life sentences who did not commit the crime. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people in prison right now serving life sentences who did not commit the crime or at least didn't have a fair trial.
In Griffin's case, Moore says his court-appointed attorney failed to call any expert witnesses. Prosecutors called 8. You know, it don't even feel real right now. Last month, the Genesee County DA dropped the criminal charges against Griffin.
When someone gets out of prison who didn't commit the crime as an exoneree, there are no services. There are no services to help him find a job, housing, training, skill-based training, anything. So he's on his own.
Griffin's on his own, trying to navigate his new normal now. He doesn't have much work experience and hopes he can get a shot at some type of career. Just everything. It's everything. It's very hard. Griffin's urging other wrongfully convicted men and women to never give up. Keep fighting, because it can be done. You know, I checked in with Mr. Griffin late this afternoon. He reminded me yesterday was the anniversary of his daughter's death, so he's still coping through that. Meantime, Mike Morse is urging attorneys to seriously consider taking a look at some of these challenging cases.
No. Let me say this to you. I'm going to be 100% open, 100% honest, Kyle. I'm here and been here for 33 years for something I did not do. By the time you get to know me and hear my story, you're going to know I didn't do it.
Unapologetic. We gon' keep running it back, running it back, running it back. It won't stop. Running it back, running it back. And that's we gon' keep running it back, running it back, running it back. Running it back, running it back, running it back. Hey, 10 toes, I'ma never miss. Boy, I'm locked in. Never take a loss in the sport, boy, I'm top 10. Giving work all around the clock. I know they watching.
Kenneth Nixon is now 37 years old and president of the Organization of Exonerees, surrounded by men who were wrongfully convicted, altogether spending more than 200 years in prison for crimes they didn't commit. Nixon spent nearly 16 years behind bars.
This is unacceptable. This is absolutely unacceptable. All of us, every single one of us, were buried alive by the people that were supposed to keep us safe.
Convicted in 2005 of a firebombing that killed 2 children, Nixon's attorneys say Detroit police relied on an inconsistent witness and fabricated evidence against him using a dishonest jailhouse informant who got a deal in exchange for his testimony.
They knew that Mr. Nixon had passed a polygraph test. They knew that he had alibi witnesses who corroborated that he was not anywhere near the location of this crime when it occurred.
Nixon was released in 2021 after investigations by the WMU Cooley Innocence Project and the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office Conviction Integrity Unit. Now this lawsuit alleges systemic problems in the Detroit Police Department that encouraged lying and fabricating evidence to close a case and get a conviction.
This conduct was not only tolerated within the department, but it was encouraged, it was condoned, and it was rewarded.
In Nixon's case, his defense was never told about a memo from one investigator to another saying the star witness had been coached by family members, or a memo from the prosecutor saying this extremely high-profile case had serious problems and was in need of corroboration.
And lo and behold, magically within weeks, they identify a jailhouse informant claiming that Ken confessed while he was in jail, which was just absolutely not true.
Attorneys say another possible suspect was never investigated. Now the city of Detroit and those officers, including Detective Moises Jimenez and Commander James Tolbert, are being sued.
They all have documented histories of destruction, documented histories of violating people's rights and victimizing our communities.
The city says the law department does not comment on pending litigation, but the plaintiffs in this case say this is about way more than money. This is about fixing a broken system.
We are seeking declaratory relief, where there's a judicial declaration that these practices are unconstitutional.
Practices the mother of Ken Nixon says cause immeasurable suffering.
The things that they see and they suffer through. It's mean and it's ugly, and these officers know the hell that they put these guys through. Most of them were children when they went away. These officers know the hell that they put these guys through. Most of them were children when they went away. I just pray that 20 years from now we don't have to have this same conversation.
In Detroit, Amy Lang, Fox 2 News.
Tonight, the family of a man put behind bars by 2 dirty police officers is pushing for a new trial.
Both are former Detroit officers who are now serving time for stealing from drug dealers.
Before they were convicted, their police work put a man in prison for 13 years. Well, now he's claiming he was framed and that there's video to prove it. Local court defender Kevin Dietz investigates.
This is David Hansberry and Brian Watson, 2 convicted Detroit police narcotics officers serving time in federal prison for ripping off drug dealers. In February of 2017, they sat down with me and said they were wrongfully convicted due to malicious prosecution.
The evidence will speak for itself. If we don't allow this story to die, if we put it out there, the right people will see.
I've heard the prosecution just call me names and dirty cops and this, and like I said, we're going to stay on the high road.
The courts disagreed, and Hansberry is serving 13 years, Watson 9. Now, this man, Casey Smith, in a court motion requesting a new trial, says he is wrongfully convicted and in prison because the 2 dirty cops, Hansberry and Watson, framed him. Casey Smith was arrested, charged, and convicted on drug charges associated with a raid on this home. Smith's sister says the house police raided for drugs has surveillance cameras that would prove her brother Casey had nothing to do with the drug house.
There are cameras on both sides of the house. So it was all, taken on camera, what took place.
The day in question, he was only on the exterior of the home, and they took the DVR, they being police officers.
From prison, Casey Smith writes, Officer Hansberry unplugged the DVR box and said he would review it. Officer Watson then told me in these exact words that he felt I knew more than what I was telling him, and that if I didn't give him what he was asking for, he was going to cook my ass. Smith says he refused to plead guilty to a crime he did not commit, so he went to trial. He lost and says it was based on false testimony, writing, during the court hearing, Hansberry was questioned about the DVR box by my attorney. He testified that he did not take the box. Local 4 legal expert Keith Corbett says it's not enough to have cops on your case convicted of a crime to get a new trial.
That would be evidence to impeach them as credible witnesses, but it would be a very long stretch for a judge to determine that that is likely to have resulted in the jury throwing out the verdict.
Smith has always stood by his innocence. His sister hopes police who know something, or Hansberry and Watson themselves, will come forward and speak up.
I would like to see justice for him. I would like for those officers to tell the truth.
The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office issued a statement. In part, it says that Officer Watson and Hansberry are disgraceful and reprehensible. However, in this case, there is no evidence that would merit overturning the jury's verdict in defendant Smith's case. The Smith family says they will continue to fight and have asked the Michigan Supreme Court Integrity Unit to help take on their cause. Kevin Dietz, Defenders.
All right, Kevin, and you can read the prosecutor's entire statement on the Defenders page of our website. Click on Detroit.com.
An emotional day in an LA courtroom today. A judge threw out the case of a man convicted of 3 rapes he did not commit.
CBS 2's Randy Page explains the evidence that helped prove his innocence.
Luis Vargas waited 16 years to hear these words.
He is, in fact, innocent.
He is, in fact, innocent, Superior Court Judge William Ryan declared of his 1999 conviction for sexually assaulting 3 victims. Attorneys with the California Innocence Project at the Western School of Law compelled the testing of DNA evidence from one of his alleged victims. The results of that test?
Our client was excluded from the DNA on the victim's clothing.
Vargas's daughter, Crystal, was 10 years old when her father was taken into custody.
Not having a father figure is difficult. You don't have that sense of protection, the sense of security. And growing up, I would cry myself to sleep.
Crystal Nunez Vargas said she got married on paper and has waited for the day she knew would come.
I'm waiting for him to come home so I can do my big church wedding and be able to have him walk me down the aisle, which is every little girl's dream. And I can't wait for that moment.
Vargas's mother, Blanca Olatorre, says her son asked her to grant one important wish the moment he becomes a free man.
He told me, Mom, when you see me, I am outside, please buy me a big hamburger and we eat it together.
But Vargas will not be reunited with his family just yet. He will first have to go before an immigration judge before he can be set free. In downtown Los Angeles, Randy Page, CBS 2 News.
I've been talking to Frank O'Connell and his son for the last 2 days as they have anticipated this $15 million settlement. Today, they decided to speak out here at the Pasadena courthouse, where 32 years ago, Frank O'Donnell was tried and wrongfully convicted.
The misjustice that was done to me 27 years ago doesn't seem to have been fixed.
Wrongfully convicted, wrongfully incarcerated, wrongfully separated from his son. Little Nick was 5 when his dad, Frank O'Connell, was locked up. The phone calls, the letters could not fill the void.
What I think was extraordinary and was difficult to relate to my friends was when you know somebody's suffering torture daily for something they didn't do, and there is no way to fix it, no easy way.
O'Connell's release came in 2012 as a nonprofit group, the Centurions, investigated O'Connell's alleged crime, a 1984 murder that happened behind a South Pasadena apartment building. O'Connell was 27 miles away in Laverne with 3 friends, but the sheriff's detectives focused instead on one witness, a man who later said the detectives pressured him to finger O'Connell, though he didn't get a good look.
That he saw them in a brief moment amidst gunfire and was scared for his life.
There was a deliberate effort to misrepresent the interviews of witnesses in this case. So this was no mistake.
What the court found in exonerating O'Connell, that those 2 investigators hid information that pointed to someone else, a contracted hitman. Yet today, the sheriff's department has never acknowledged any wrongdoing. Frank O'Connell and his son wonder, have others been railroaded, and will the Board of Supervisors require training for detectives so they understand that all evidence must be turned over? Training so that another child does not have to live decades without a dad.
And once the doors are closed, they're really, really difficult to pry open.
We have contacted the Sheriff's Department for their response. We have not received an answer as of this hour. As for that $15 million award, Frank O'Connell says that he's going to be using it to help other exonerees.
Welcome back to CBS Mornings, where we have got a story for you. Earlier this month, 35-year-old Sheldon Thomas walked out of a Brooklyn, New York courtroom free after almost 2 decades behind bars. Thomas was arrested back in 2004 for murder after an eyewitness pointed to a picture of a guy named Sheldon Thomas in a police lineup of photos. But the man in the image was actually a different person entirely, happened to have the same name. And as we step through the circles of absurdity here, that guy also had no link to the case. Nevertheless, prosecutors continued to focus on the Sheldon Thomas they had in custody, which eventually led to his wrongful conviction. Thomas talked to our Lilia Luciano just days after his release in his very first TV interview.
I'm waiting for this my whole life.
Sheldon Thomas was 16 when police took down the door of his home and locked him up. Now, 19 years later, he's been effectively exonerated.
How have you been sleeping?
I really haven't.
Yeah.
I've just been resting, not really sleeping. Yeah. Still trying to grasp the fact that I'm not in the cage anymore, that I'm actually being treated with respect and love and dignity.
The way you're seen, the way people look at you, the way people talk to you or listen to you.
Like a human. Because when you're behind the walls, you don't get that. You get the worst of mankind. They say the worst, do the worst, treat you the worst. And in a crazy way, sometimes you start to feel as if they're right. After it's been done to you for so long, constantly, you start to feel like, well, maybe they are right.
You lose sight of your own humanity.
And that's the psychological chess that goes on within.
Thomas was convicted for second-degree murder in the December 2004 death of a 14-year-old boy in Brooklyn. Attorneys William Caston and Leslie Ressinger have worked with Thomas for more than a decade. They say the case should have never even made it to trial.
How much of his case was based on lies?
100%. From the police interaction to him, every party failed him in the system.
In a pretrial hearing, a detective lied, then admitted to lying on the stand, and the case still moved forward.
He is arrested based on a photo that is not his.
The people involved in decision-making refused to accept the fact that a mistake was made. How can a jury reach a fair verdict? It was rigged from the start.
The unit that reviewed his case after years of failed appeals concluded that Thomas was denied due process at every stage and found one of the detectives involved had been harassing Thomas after a prior arrest and lied about knowing him.
Did you ever feel like they were targeting you specifically?
Most definitely. It was wrong, it was illegal, and they shouldn't have done it. This is why all this burden is placed on me to this day.
It should have been the other way around. You're innocent until proven guilty.
From my lenses, the way I see life, it's always like that for people like me. For people that look like me, it's always like that. You're guilty until you actually prove that you're innocent.
Nearly 2 decades later, he finally stepped into what still feels like a mirage of freedom.
I haven't even cried yet since I've been home. Like, I haven't even got to the point where it actually hit me. I still have dreams about being in prison. I'm scared to go to sleep.
You're scared you're dreaming?
Yeah, as the days go by, it dawns on me a little bit more.
Mr. Thomas' motion to vacate his present conviction is granted.
An At a hearing this month, Thomas shared how his hope was sustained for so long by releasing resentment.
When I was sentenced, Del Judas said that I deserved to spend the rest of my life in prison. He was wrong. I didn't deserve what happened, and I forgive him.
And yet he still trusts that the pendulum can swing in the direction of justice.
It's not the system, it's the people, because the people is the system. The people is the driving force of the wheel that makes it turn. It's the people. So you have to be more mindful and be more selectful of who you assign these roles. I mean,
It sounds to me like you still believe in the system if the right people were in place.
most definitely. Most definitely. And the right people that know how to exercise mercy. I know I've lost 20 years already, but ultimately I prevailed. I don't like losing, so I have to let go because I don't want that to be what defines me as a human, as a person. So yeah, it goes into the universe.
What would you like to define you?
People getting to know me, my qualities, my personalities, my ambitions, the person, the human. I want love to define me.
Part of that ambition is to help others in a similar plight.
You know, I've left a lot of people that I believe is innocent behind. I think about them every night. I think about them every day and every night.
Sheldon says he can't sleep because he's afraid that he's going to wake up and it was all a dream. He can't sleep because of the other inmates he met up at Attica who he believes are there innocent. We reached out to the detective that we mentioned in this case who was involved in the original arrest, and he said he did not want to comment. Here's one thing that the attorney told me. When you commit a crime and you serve your sentence, when you walk out, there is resources, there is assistance. For him, they just open the door and you're on your own. So he gets
no assistance whatsoever.
nothing right now. He's relying on his elderly mother who's working a second shift to support him, and on crowdfunding that his attorney set up. And eventually, perhaps he may sue and maybe he'll win, but he's not ready for that. Right now, he's just focusing.
And what's it like for him to be around people?
Well, that's what he was saying. He said, we were walking around Central Park, and he said, when you're in prison, the only time you get outside, you're in the yard, and if somebody gets close to you,
it's normally not a good thing.
It's not a good thing.
Yeah.
You're going to get attacked. So he feels like that self-preservation means isolation. And even with his family, he says, I feel so bad because they reach out to me, and I just need the solitude.
Yes. I hope that he will allow himself a good cry. He certainly deserves and needs that. But I marvel that he can sit here today after the injustice that happened to him and say, I forgive them.
You know what?
I would still need help on that. And I want love to define.
Yeah, he's going to need a lot of therapy, and we talked so much. I wish I could share everything, but he did. I asked him what got you through it, and he said Viktor Frankl's book, Man's
Search for Meaning, one of the greatest books
he
ever.
read it over and over, and he read about this man in a concentration camp, and he said, well, at least that's not this, and if he can get through it, and all those lessons got him.
Book's incredible, powerful.
He's an amazing human being.
Yeah.
Incredible grace and pressure, Lillian.
Most inspired person I've met in my life.
Wow,
I get that.
That's saying a lot because you've met a lot of people.
Yeah.
Lillian, thank you very much.
When you're on death row, it feels like a gun is literally being held to your head every day. It is a day-to-day assault on the human soul. I had my life stolen away for 25.5 years for a crime I didn't commit. You can't get that time back.
There are countless people doing a hard time in American prisons for crimes they didn't commit. I've interviewed dozens of them in my podcast.
There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people in prison right now serving life sentences who did not commit the crime.
They knew that Mr. Nixon had passed a polygraph test. They knew that he had alibi witnesses who corroborated that he was not anywhere near the location of this crime when it occurred.
Detroit police relied on an inconsistent witness and fabricated evidence against him using a dishonest jailhouse informant who got a deal in exchange for his testimony.
I was being judged for something I knew I had not done. guards already know why you in there. So they start saying stuff. There's the baby killer. There's the guy who kidnapped his kids. So people reading off into that.
I just pray that 20 years from now we don't have to have this same conversation.
You can't get that time back.